right, hey everyone, it's Sam here, and I have Victor with me today. Victor's another one of my clients who recently landed a summer internship offer, and so definitely after recruiting for a pretty long time, but he was super persistent about it and super committed to the process, and ended up obviously getting a outcome that he's very happy with. So just want to definitely get him on here to talk to you guys about his recruiting process and kind of how he went through it and how he was ultimately able to get there. And so, Victor, thanks for taking the time to be talking to us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And where I thought we would start is, first of all, congratulations, obviously. Has it sunk in yet how amazing your accomplishment actually is?
Yeah, it actually has because I've been recruiting since, well, I'm a junior now in my spring semester, and I've been recruiting since like my sophomore spring, so almost a whole year now. And I've just been getting so many interviews and stuff, but it just hasn't been working out. And I actually didn't start getting too many interviews until I started working with you and like updated my resume and everything. But this was coming down to one of like the very last potential job offers I could have gotten, and I ended up getting it. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. That reminds me of like my own story when back when I was recruiting when I was in college, which is obviously over a decade ago because I'm old. But when I was recruiting for full
Yeah,
time, I got rejected. I think I don't know by over 20 banks before I was down to my last two interviews with
yeah,
Deutsche Bank and Jeffries, and then I got both of those offers, but they were like my last two interviews, and it was like at
yeah,
one point I definitely thought like, oh, I'm probably not going to make it into banking at this point because when you get rejected so many times, it's deflating, right? But then you just
yeah.
have to keep going, and then all you need is that one offer, right?
Hmm.
And also like as you continue to recruit, I'm sure you got better and better at interviewing
Yeah,
and doing, right?
yeah.
And so I'm super glad that you stuck with it. I actually did some research into this just because I was curious before this call. But obviously, hey, you and just so everyone knows, right? Like, can we tell everyone like what school you go to?
I go to Florida State University, which is a pretty non-target school, especially because it's like down south, and most big banks are like mostly located in like New York and Los Angeles, or
Right.
not what, but it's like and then when I was doing like my alumni research, like there aren't very many students out of work with like particular groups in my school that really involved with had a focus on investment banking, and there weren't that many students in that, and we were
Right.
all just really hungry to make it out and try to get an IB offer. So
Right. So you go to a non-target state school, and then part of the reason you chose to go to Florida, I mean, obviously, state schools are more affordable, right?
yeah, and yeah, so I've been I'm originally from South Florida. I lived here my whole life, and I really only had the option. Like I applied to out of state schools, and my application process, I actually went 6 for 6 for the colleges I applied to, but like my parents wanted me to go to undergrad at a state school, so that's how I ended up going to Florida State University.
Yeah, and I think that's like super common. I mean, nowadays school is so expensive. I
Yeah,
talk to a lot of students like yourself where, hey, it's just like, it's not because you can go to a better target school or whatever. It's just that for financial reasons, you have to go to a state school, but then that puts you at a huge disadvantage for recruiting for banking, right?
yeah,
Even though it's not really your fault. But coming back to what the point that I was going to make is I did some research on this, and I think Florida State, you guys have around 33,000 students, right?
yeah,
And so that's around 8,000, let's call it 8,250 people per graduating class. And then I was
yeah,
curious, so I went and looked on LinkedIn to see like how many people in the last few graduating classes have actually listed themselves as like investment banking analysts, right? Because I want to say,
mm,
hey, how many people from Florida State actually make it in banking? And so in the class of 2018, now this is not like 100% scientifically precise or anything, but I think it
yeah,
gives you a good sense. In 2018, I counted one girl that went to Deutsche Bank, a guy that went to SunTrust, a guy that went to Wells Fargo, and a guy that went to Raymond James, and that's it. So I counted four guys.
yeah,
In the class of
yeah,
29,
and those are actually all the people that I've talked to. So that I'm pretty sure that's actually really accurate because I know like the actual network that's in IB, and I know every single one, all four of those people that you mentioned, and that's all that
Right.
there is. So
Right. And then the class of 2019, I did the same thing. And it was one girl that went to Goldman, three guys that went to Wells Fargo, and one girl that went to Deutsche Bank. Right.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
in the last two classes, you guys had anywhere from 4 to 5 people out of a class of over 8,000 people. Right.
yeah,
And that's like literally the degree of difficulty that we're talking about, which a lot of the times I talk to students from non-target schools and they have no idea how stacked how the odds are so stacked against them, right? Like I'll
yeah,
sometimes I ask people like, hey, so how many people go to your school? And then like, how many people do you think actually get into banking each year? And some people say, oh, I think there's like 50 people from my school or 100 people from my school. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's not that many considering you're going to a non-target school. But again, coming back to you, like I don't know how many people in your class are going to end up going to banking, but
yeah.
you could be one of 4 or 5 people out of your entire class.
Yeah, I know. There's like a program to get in the IB through our school, and I actually didn't end up getting into that, but I'm really close with all the people that are in it. And
Mm-hmm.
there was like 8 that got into it, and only like 3 of them have offers right now. So
Wow.
I'm one
Okay.
of the lucky few for my class that I know of. So
They probably regret not taking you at this point.
yeah,
Well, anyway, so I just wanted I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you already knew that, but when I looked up those statistics, I was like, wow, this is freaking amazing. I gotta tell Victor like
yeah.
how awesome of a job he
That's
did
right.
overcoming
Yeah,
the odds.
it's a really small group here, but the ones that are fortunate are the ones that worked really hard and were persistent. And so
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to go back to the beginning, right? So you first came to me in early July of last year. I think it was like right after the Fourth of July weekend, I believe. And
mm,
do you remember where you were at the recruiting process back then? Like what you were struggling with?
yeah, so when I first reached out to you is because like I knew I was at a pretty disadvantage from a non-target school, and I thought having you in my network would help. And then I just remember that I really wanted to get into investment banking, but I just didn't know where to start because all I really had were resources online, and some resources were like maybe like Wall Street or Oasis, where they're like, oh, buy this training model and you'll get into investment banking, or like, oh, you have to start with networking. But it was kind of hard. It was awkward for me to network with people that weren't really alumni, and
Mm-hmm.
like as you just mentioned, there aren't very many alumni that are actually in investment banking.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had no idea where to start. So I feel like when I got off the call with you, the like introductory call, you made it a lot clearer for me, and you broke it down step by step. Like first you have to start off with your resume and all that stuff. Then you have to work on networking, and then you can prepare for interviews once you actually land those interviews. And then it doesn't stop there, because once you're in the interviews, like how I mentioned before, I've done dozens of interviews, and it's not as easy as you get an interview, you get a job. You actually have to really work well at showing yourself and all that. So
Right,
I
right.
think with your help, you broke it down and made it a lot easier to go step by step on what it really takes to get into banking. So
Yep. Yep. And I mean, when you came to me, obviously, it was the summer between sophomore and junior year. So
mhm.
had you already been recruiting during the second semester of sophomore year, given how, accelerated the recruiting timeline is these days?
um, well, I just what I was doing was just really applying online, not doing too much networking, just hopefully trying to get in. But like as everyone should most likely know, that these banks get um, thousands and thousands of resumes. So like it's really hard to stand out from the crowd, especially if you don't know anyone that works there. So
Yeah.
I was basically just applying like a black hole, but like with your program and everything, I did a lot better with networking, and I feel like my resume stood out more. And you also offered me a lot of resources that I was able to talk to in my interviews, such as like that national investment banking case competition, which was really good for me. So
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, so that's actually instead of thousands or thousands of applications, if we're talking about these bulge bracket banks, they actually get tens of thousands to hundreds
yeah,
of thousands on the high end, right? So it's actually a whole other level in terms of the magnitude of the number of applications that they get. But Okay, so then like to basically summarize, the reason you were struggling back then, because I went back and looked at my notes from that first conversation that we had. But obviously, first things first, you go to a non-target school, right? And so it's hard.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of alumni they can reach out to. Um, you hadn't done much networking up to that point. I think when you came and talked to me, you said you had talked to maybe 5 people, right?
Yeah, I told you I could. You asked me if I could count the number of people I talked to on my hands. I said yeah. So
Right. You had talked to 5 people, but you said you had no idea how to do it.
yeah,
And then you mentioned like, you didn't have too much interview experience and interviews were hard for you. I think you had just come back from like a weekend in New York City because you had a wedding or something and you ended up networking with someone there, but he ended up turning that into kind of like a mock interview for you to like help you out. But you realized you really
yeah,
struggled with like telling your story and just selling yourself and
hmm
he told you like, hey, Victor, you should work on the behaviorals first before you do the technicals. But then once you start working on the behaviorals, you kind of forgot like a lot of the technicals that you had learned.
yeah,
And then
yeah. That's actually exactly what happened.
yeah, because I went back and looked at my notes and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then the other thing was like you had applied for like other programs like Modern Guild and things like that, and you got selected for the interviews, but then like you didn't get past the interview process, right? As well as like some diversity programs at the bulge bracket banks and things like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I mentioned before. Why I think I really need your help, and it paid off was, but there were just so many things like thrown at you online. So I thought like like, hey, if I know my technicals, I'll get a job in IB. But that's not really how it works because most interviews really start off behavioral, and if you don't like do well in your behavioral interviews, they're not really going to care to grill you on technicals because like they can't see themselves working with you. So I feel like
Right.
that's where I had a problem where I just didn't know like there's so many things to study and I just didn't know like how to go in order and stuff like that.
Right. And with the behaviorals, I feel like most of the time when I talk to students, they feel more confident about their behaviorals and their technicals, right? Because
Yeah.
they feel like technicals are harder. I might not know the answer. Behaviorals, even if they ask me something I don't know, I could just like make something up and it's just talking about yourself, right? Like what could be so hard about that, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but in reality, as you go through the process, you realize that it's actually not that simple and not that straightforward, right?
Hmm.
Like a lot of times the answers that you come up with actually aren't as good as they need to be, but it's a blind spot for you, right? Because you don't know
Hmm.
what needs to be better since you came up with the answers, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So like, and then like just so people know too, like as you like, what kind of experiences were you going into recruiting with? Like when you first came to me, like what did you have on your resume at the time?
Well, yeah, when I first came to you, I only had really two things on my resume. I did like a internship this summer. I worked like part time with my dad, so I had that on my resume. And then um that summer I called you. I was working doing a summer internship for just like a company called National Jets, or they like operate jets and lease out jets and stuff like that. And I just it was really more of an accounting internship, which I just create help them create a budget for the upcoming year. But I was really able to leverage that with you helping me like getting the things out of me, like what I was actually doing in that internship, and I was really able to leverage that in my interviews to make it seem more like banking related and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, the internship with your dad, that's more of like a sales and marketing internship, right?
Yeah, so I did like a sales and I did like a basically a marketing internship with my dad where I really just helped them bring it like with customer acquisition efforts. So I did like Google Analytics, Facebook advertisements, and ClickFunnels, just like help them bring in more clients, which was nothing finance related. But I just like to mention this that whatever experiences you have, you should always have on your resume because actually a lot of bankers were impressed with ClickFunnels because I had that as one of my skills. They'd
Mm.
always ask me, what are ClickFunnels? And I told them, what I did, like what ClickFunnels were, and they were actually really impressed by that. And it's like something different that they see on a resume that maybe, people applying to their bank just have the same thing over and over again, like Excel, Word, stuff like that. So
Right. And a big part of it too is also like knowing how to tie the experiences you have back to why you would be a good candidate for banking, right? And
yeah.
it doesn't necessarily always have to be a finance experience. for you to make it relevant, right? You just have to,
Yeah.
like, that's part of what we have to work on, right? And then the other thing, and then the other internship that you did, the finance one, that's basically like a FP&A internship essentially, right?
Yeah. I just really just helped them like forecast the budget for the upcoming year. So it wasn't really a structured internship. I just made it the way I kind of wanted to. Like he gave me a budget, and then what I did was I actually helped him like forecast the budget for the upcoming year. So
Yeah.
then at the end of the summer, I pitched to him, you know, like, hey, like your maintenance department is struggling, or like, you know, this you might want to like cut out this department, or maybe like cut expenses because it's really losing cash throughout
Yeah.
the year. So
Yep. Okay. And so, I mean, because I asked these questions because I want to dispel the notion, the myth that a lot of people think like, oh, if I go to a non-target school, I can't get into banking, or oh, if I don't have a lot of uh, like relevant finance experience on my resume, then I can't get into banking. Like, oh, I got to have like an internship from like a boutique investment bank at least if I want to
yeah.
be competitive. Like, you didn't have any of that, right?
Yeah, and I was actually shooting for like my freshman year. I was like reaching out to a lot of the boutiques, and coming from Florida, there's like the number of boutique investment banks in Florida, like you could actually count them on your hand, maybe 15 at max. So I was like reaching out to those, and a lot of them like, oh, sorry, we either don't take interns or we only hire after their junior year and stuff like that. So I was like struggling there too. So I just did the best of what I could get with working with like this company called National Jets. So
Right, right. Got it. Okay. So let's see. So can you share with everyone kind of like what got you interested in investment banking? Like, why was this so important to you? Or like, why did you want to try and do something that's so difficult to do when the odds were so stacked against you?
yeah, well, so I guess I'll start off back in high school. So in high school, I took like this finance course, finance elective, my senior year, and we played the stock market game. And ever since then, I've been really interested in the stock market. So I've always been like reading the Wall Street Journal and reading books. And I started my own portfolio my freshman year with money that I saved up. And then after my freshman year, once I started taking my first finance courses like financial accounting, I looked at like career paths and see where I wanted to go. And you know, I've always liked challenges, and I saw that investment banking was like the best place to go after college for potential career opportunities in the future, and just you know learning as much as finance at a very with a very steep learning curve. So that's what drew me to it. And ever since the end of my freshman year, I've just been like researching investment banking and just wanting to break in so badly. So I think like that drove me to you know really push myself and never give up to finally get an offer in the end. So
Yep, yep. And and on a more personal level, I remember when we first talked about this, this kind of stood out to me. But you mentioned how obviously, hey, you come from like a middle class family, right? And obviously, your
yeah.
parents work very hard to support you and give you like the best education that you can possibly have, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you want to make them proud, right? And also like obviously they're helping you pay for college, and they were even taking out student loans to do that, and you wanted to be able to not just pay them back, but you and pay them back and more, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and so you wanted to make sure that you're going to be successful and have a high paying job and all that good stuff. Not because like money is the most important thing or whatever, but nowadays people invest so much money into their college education that
Yeah.
if you're graduating with a job that's paying you $50,000, but you're graduating with like $30,000 or $40,000 of student loans, which I think is like actually the national average right now, is people are graduating with between 30 and 40,000 of student loans. That's a horrible ROI, right?
Yeah.
But if you can graduate with a job that's paying you $125,000 or whatever your first year out of school, that's 2.5 times higher than what an average college grad makes in the U.S., which is $50,000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that I think that is something that I hear from a lot of people too, which is just like, yeah, my parents are working so hard and paying so much for me to go to school. I want to make sure that this is a good investment on their behalf. So I definitely remember talking about that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So then, like I said earlier, so then like you didn't. Okay, so that's why you want to go to banking, and that all makes sense. You love investing, and you want to learn as much as possible. Now, like I said earlier, you didn't come to me until early July, right? Between sophomore and junior year,
Yeah.
basically the summer before junior year. Now, before that, obviously, you had already been trying to get into investment banking on your own, right? So,
Hmm.
like, what were some of the things that you were doing on your own, right? Like, what were some of the other resources that you have been using?
Yeah, so I guess a major resource I would say is just Wall Street Oasis, their forums. I just go through that, but like there's just so much thrown out at you, and if you don't really have like, especially coming from a non-target, if you don't have someone like maybe like guiding you throughout the way, it's like a lot to handle, and you might not know where to start off. So all I was really doing before working with you was just like applying through like career websites and stuff like that, and it's also hard coming from non-target school because my like career, my job board doesn't like. There's maybe three investment banks on there, and
Mm.
they're boutique investment banks. So I was just applying like maybe like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, just applying through those like career websites, and like it's hard if you don't really know anyone through there, and I joined like clubs in my school that were focused on investment banking, which is how I know all the people that you just mentioned. Like, I'm like good friends with most of them, but like there's not too many of them, so that's really all I could have done. And then I guess I studied up on my technicals, and what something that I didn't really work on was my behaviorals. I thought I could just, how you said before, just wing it. That's not really a good strategy, as I realized going through so many interviews that your behaviorals really matter, and you have to be able to tie your skill set to your behavioral questions, so they see like what you're good at and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you did all the same things that people were normally doing. Like you read Wall Street Oasis, you read like M&I, you
Yeah.
read the technical interview guides from those websites. I think you also went through like a Wall Street prep boot camp as well, right?
Yeah, so I think that was really good because it was like a hands-on experience as opposed to like paying for something where you maybe go through it yourself. Because Wall Street Prep actually came to our school, and they walked us through a three-statement model in Excel and then DCF model. So I
Yep.
thought that was really good, and that gave me like really like a good insight on like maybe an analyst day-to-day job, and it's something I enjoyed. So that even pushed me even further into wanting to go into investment banking. So.
Right, right. But that's kind of like helpful with the technical component, which is just like one very small part of everything else you need to do well to actually be able to do
Yeah.
the job, right? I feel like people
Mm-hmm.
always focus so much on the technicals, and then that's like all they kind of are like zoned in on, and then like they forget
Yeah.
that there's so much else, so many other pieces to this puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And then all the information that's online, whether it's like Wall Street Oasis on these forums or whatever, obviously all the information is out there, right? Like we have the internet, we have Google these days. Like information is not the problem, right? Everybody has information, the same access to the same information, but it's more about knowing what to do with all that information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have all the same information as everyone else, what's the edge, right? Like what makes you the top 1% of the people who are trying to get these jobs, right? Since that's how many people
Yeah.
actually get accepted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then like, how did you find me in the first place? Actually,
Well, I actually got lucky that I was working with, because what I was doing with my dad over the summer while I was interning, I was also helping him out, was creating Facebook advertisements that lead into ClickFunnels. So I just like I would go on my own Facebook and see like what ads would be targeted towards me. And then I found this. I was like, wow, this is actually perfect. Like I've been wanting to get into investment banking, and this is an ad just for investment banking. So I clicked that ad, and then I got put into your like Wall Street what's the other group you have? Not Wall Street Mastermind. The
the free Facebook group, right?
Yeah, the free Facebook group. And then so you like what I've always been telling my dad is like content really matters, and the content that you were putting out was really good. Like I'd sit on your page every day, look at like maybe your thought of the day, your market updates, like everything you were putting out was really good. So I decided to schedule a call with you, and when I scheduled my call with you, you're really good at telling me what I needed to work on, and how you could help me. And I thought that it would be really beneficial for me to work with you. And I'd be better off working with you than if I were on my own. So I
Yeah.
decided to like take a leap and work with you, and it ended up paying off in the end. So I'm really happy for that.
Got it. And shameless plug for the Facebook group, but it's called Investment Banking Recruiting Secrets for those of you who are listening and want to join the group. If you're not already in it, you can just go search for it. But okay, so then, yeah, after that initial call, I remember, like you said, you had so much conviction in my program. Like, I think you went and talked to your dad about joining this program because you wanted him to help you pay for it, right? Like most of my clients are obviously college students, and their parents are still supporting them financially. And so most of the time, the parents are the ones that are kind of like investing on their behalf, right? But I remember you talked to him, and then what happened when you talked to him?
Well, he was just a little skeptical about the program, and like he thought it was just too much money for me to be spending up front when I didn't know what the end results would be. But you know, I believed in myself and I believed in you, so I really wanted to do this program. So I reached out to you and told you, hey, like my dad said he doesn't want to help me with the program at the time, like we don't have the money. And you taught me about resourcefulness, and you know what I did was to pay for the program. I applied to different credit cards, you know, zero interest. They have a lot of that for college students, and so I just had to apply for many credit cards, and so I could finally pay it, and hopefully in the end it pay off, and it actually is, because hopefully I'll be making more this summer than what the program initially cost. So.
Well, you'll definitely be making more this summer than what the program got. I'll guarantee you that.
Yeah.
I wish I could charge as much as you're going to make this summer for my program, but I definitely don't do that.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty amazing to me, right? Because what you just said, because a lot of the times when I talk to college students, they will talk about, you know, first of all, I don't work with very many people, right? You know this. Like I only work with like no more than 10 to 15 clients at any given time. Because it's such sorry about that, because it's such a hands-on and time-intensive process for me, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to be very selective about who I actually work with, right? And a lot of times, like what I try to screen for is like, hey, how committed is this person to actually getting into investment banking? Because I know what we're going to be doing together is going to be extremely hard, right? And if this person is not that committed to the goal, based on experience, they're not gonna get there, right? Like think about how committed you have to be. But a lot of times I talk to students, they'll talk about how committed they are to this goal, and how they know they have to get the help they need because, you know, they know what they're currently doing is not working. But then they'll let like the smallest thing stop them from actually doing it, right? But you were different. You said, yeah, I'm absolutely committed to this. And then you had to overcome like multiple obstacles, right? Like, oh, your dad won't help you invest. And then, oh, you went out. You're like, okay, well, then I'm gonna go out and try to take apply for some credit cards. And I remember, like, I think even like a couple of the first credit cards that you applied to initially, like they didn't even approve you, right?
Yeah,
probably would have just there. And then you're like, well, I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna apply to other cards, and then you ended up getting like 2 or 3 different cards that were, like you said, interest free, so that by the time you had to pay it back, I mean, it gave you time to go out and make more money and pay that car back. But then a lot of people are like, hey, I don't want to take on debt to do this. But there's a difference between like investment debt, where you're investing in your own future because you know it's a great ROI. It's kind of like, you know, how private equity firms take on debt to do LBOs, right? That's investment debt, versus like if you're just, you know, taking on debt to buy for like frivolous things, right?
Yeah. And my dad told me that too, because I remember when I asked him and I told him I was going to apply for credit cards. Like my parents aren't very big on credit cards and they don't like them. But my dad was like, hey, it's not like you're buying like a car, like jewelry on credit. It's like something that could potentially pay off in the future. So he allowed me to do it. And it did end up paying off. So.
Right. Well, look, I commend you for that, because you made an investment in yourself. And it paid off, right? And again, like I said, the other thing too, that it's funny how it works, but and you may or may not have realized this, but I'm sure the fact that you had to go so far out of your way to make this happen, it just made you even more committed to this process, right? It's probably also partially why you were so persistent, because you had to make this work, right? You invested so much in this process. If you didn't make it work, then what were you supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
But in a way that actually helped you, right? Because like a lot of other people you were competing with, they've probably given up at this point, right? Like we're in what,
Yeah.
like you got your offer in what, February of junior year, right? So
Yeah.
pretty late, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's amazing, right? So again, I definitely I want to give you a lot of props for that. So very quickly, like let's talk about like, okay, so then you started going the recruiting process. Like, what were all the ways that you feel like this program actually made a difference for you? Like, what were the things that kind of we worked on together that really helped you? And then like, what was the interview process like for you? Like, what were some of the banks that you interviewed with, and how did they end up going? And ultimately, like, where did you end up getting an offer from? Because I realized we haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah. So yeah, so let me see where I'll start off. I guess so this program, so the first thing I guess is resume that you helped us with, and honestly that the resume that I at first had and then the resume that you worked on me with was way better than I could have ever imagined. So I would have to really emphasize that you need to have a really strong resume because you're really good at taking out what we actually did in our jobs and portraying it towards maybe more banking related. And then the next step was networking, obviously. And I still use that Excel model that you provided us with networking. Always jot down your notes with whoever you speak with. And then, so I guess the third, which is I would say the biggest thing, was the behavioral part of the course. So that the candidate questionnaire that you provided us with, I actually, so for those who don't know, it's just a questionnaire about ourselves to learn more about ourselves and get out, our skills and what we've done in the past. And I actually read through that every single time before I do an interview. So when they ask me a question, I remember my past experiences and can tie back the best answer to what they're looking for and the skill set that I could bring to the table. So I would say that was one of the biggest things for me. But then obviously the technicals are good, but I'd recommend that for ever who's still recruiting that you do like case competitions and case studies because those really help you and it's easier to talk about that in an interview than if someone asks you a technical and you just walk them through like an answer from a textbook, which is like kind of generic. So I just say that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So okay, so we helped you with all those things, and then like you said earlier, you started getting a lot more interviews after we did those things, right? Because obviously your application materials were better, you were networking better, and then so like, what were some of the banks that you ended up interviewing with?
Yeah, so I interviewed with Deutsche, who actually came on campus for us, and I made it to the final round, and that was the one I was really banking on. This was all the way back in like October. Like I interviewed with them like my first 3 weeks of of last fall, and I made it to the final round, but I inevitably didn't end up getting the offer, and I was kind of disappointed. But I didn't want to stop. I can't just bank on one potential job opportunity. So I had to reach out to more banks and stuff. So I interviewed with like Citi. I interviewed with a lot of small boutiques in Florida, one in Jacksonville, a few in South Florida. And then I ended up, I was getting kind of scared at this point. Like I really just wanted a summer internship. And let me see. I applied to a little bit of like back office operational investment banking things. And then I went to Citi and again for that. And I went to the final round and, I didn't get that. They placed they made an order of like the intern selection. And when I got the call back, I interviewed for 2 groups and I ended up getting runner up for both. So that was kind of devastating.
I didn't stop
like there.
Weren't you also like the runner-up for the Deutsche Bank opportunity too?
Yeah, that's like the Deutsche Bank guy called me and he was like, "Hey, like we really wanted you, but we only have a certain amount of spots open." And
right, they only take like one person from your school, right?
Yeah, and not even they actually didn't even end up selecting someone from my school. And the year before, they had an intern from my school that they said was their best intern. So I was kind of like disappointed about that. But Yeah, so interviewed with a lot of small boutiques, like back office things. Then this key bank ended up getting my offer for all those who don't know, key bank capital markets in New York. And I'm going through the process of selecting my group right now. But I ended up getting this because I was really persistent. So I just kept applying to jobs, and I applied to them in the fall. And I got lucky because just being so persistent, because I applied to them in the fall and I didn't end up getting it. But what happened was they ended up opening up recruiting again because another spot opened up, and there was only one spot available in the New York office for the capital markets investment banking team. And so I had to re-recruit for them, and I ended up getting it in the end. So
Yep. So lots of close calls. Like the Deutsche Bank interview was like pretty much right after you graduated from the program, I think. And so like that was one of your earlier interviews. And even then, you made it all the way to final rounds, did well. They liked you, but they just didn't have enough spots, which happens sometimes, right? Because again,
mm-hmm.
they're only hiring like 1% of the people. So if you're like in the top 2 percentile, it's like really close but not close enough, right? So there's a lot of those. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but you were persistent, and then you ended up landing at KeyBank Capital Markets, which is actually better than a lot of those other opportunities that you were interviewing earlier on, right? Like whether it's the
Yeah.
small boutiques or not to mention like the back office. Like I would have told you not to go to the back office jobs actually, but hey, you are where you are now, which is this is phenomenal outcome. I know you always wanted to work in New York. Now you get to go there
Mm-hmm.
for the summer, and then and I have a great 10-week experience at
Yeah.
a legitimate mid-market bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So, look, guys, I think what we can all learn from Victor is that if you're committed enough and if you're truly willing to do whatever it takes and you have the perseverance to keep going despite all the challenges and the setbacks along the way, then you can succeed, right? With the right help. Now, having the commitment and the perseverance alone is not enough, right? Like you got to have the know-how, right? Like
Yeah.
if if you don't know, like if you don't know what you're doing, right, or if you've been trying to figure things out on your own for a long time and you're not getting the results that you want, nothing's going to change if you just keep doing the same things, right? Like you have to have the self-awareness to reach out for help like Victor did and be okay with admitting that you don't have to do everything on your own, right? Like so like if you feel like what I just said is describing you right now, and maybe the odds are stacked against you for a variety of reasons. Maybe you don't go to a target school, okay? Or maybe you don't have a lot of relevant experience, or maybe you're not a naturally gifted interviewer and you have no idea how to network. Like reach out to me and see if I can help you, right? Like you can book a free strategy session with me, which is that introductory call that Victor talked about on this call, and tell me about the challenges you're having, right? And I'll let you know if I can help you or not. Because if I can help you, if I can't help you, I won't help you, right? Like I'll tell you I can't help you, but and instead I might point you in another direction that I think is going to serve you best. But if I can help you, and then let's get you the help that you need so that you can change the trajectory of your career for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years of your life, right? So go and book a call now. You can do so at wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. But the street in the URL is not spelled out. It's abbreviated. So it's ST, right? So it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And I look forward to speaking with you guys. Okay. So with that said, Victor, thanks a lot for doing this interview today and taking the time. I know you're busy, and both I and the listeners really appreciate your time. So best of luck this summer, and definitely keep me posted on how your internship goes. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, man. Thank you. All right, guys. That's it for today, and we'll talk to you next time. Okay. Thanks for listening. Bye.